A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
John was standing with two of his disciples, and as he watched Jesus walk by, he said, "Behold the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard what he said and followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following him and said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which translated means teacher, "where are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and you will see." So they went and saw where Jesus was staying, and they stayed with him that day. It was about 4 p.m. Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, was one of the two who heard John and followed Jesus. He first found his brother Simon and told him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ. Then he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You will be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The Gospel of the Lord. So I was driving last night, and what do you do when you're on the open road? You turn on the radio, just cruise. And not really, but the Eagles, was the Eagles-Falcons game last night? That was really boring, so I didn't want to listen to that, and started cycling through the stations, and eventually Leonard Skinner was on the radio. And I was once a pretty big fan of Skinner. I'm young enough that it cycled back through. It was cool again to listen to Skinner. But, I had a fascinating experience with the song Don't Ask Me No Questions. Wait, how's it go? Don't ask me no questions, I won't tell you any lies. Something like that. And, it was just really interesting because, I had this experience where, I had basically stopped listening to most secular music for a long time. Maybe about 8 years. And recently I've kind of gotten back into it because I'm realizing that music will speak to us on multiple levels. And, growing up, I didn't even know the words to this song. I just liked it. It speaks to us on kind of a bodily level, and even deeper to our soul as well. But I've been finding as I go back to this music, the lyrics speak to another level. And I had that last night, and the song, sings about, their experience of coming off tour and going back home and having people ask them all these questions about their life. What's it like out there on the road? What's going on with you, this, that, the other thing. And the response is typically, "Leave me alone. I don't want to talk about anything. Don't ask me any questions, and I won't have to tell you any lies. Stop asking me questions, and I won't have to send you away. If you want to talk about fishing, I guess that'll be all right." And, my response to that was, well, thank God Jesus didn't do that, he's out on the road in a certain sense, and every time he comes back somewhere, and, even from the start of his ministry we see today, when people ask him questions, he's not completely dismissive of them. He leaves that space in his heart to allow them in and see a little glimpse of what's going on there, and really ultimately to experience the whole of what he has to offer. So we'll get back to that. If I remember, I'll get to multiple layers in John's Gospel too, but it's just interesting. So it's an experience too that I think so many of us have, when somebody asks us about our own life, isn't there a tendency for most of the people, towards most of the people around us, just to, it's all right, it's fine, don't ask me too many questions. I don't really want to share what's going on in my life. It's a common experience. So that song connects with us in different ways. I want to say a couple of things about our readings today that are just particularly interesting to me. Some people think that the Bible is a really dry, boring book, but I just want to show you that it's really funny. Get ready to laugh really hard. Okay? So in our first reading today, the name Eli means something like "my God," okay? And the name Samuel means something like "he who hears God." So if you put those phrases in place of their names, you have something like God called to the one who hears God, who answered, "Here I am." Samuel, the one who hears God, runs to my God and says, "Did you call me?" And my God says, "No, I didn't call you." God calls again to the one who hears God, and the one who hears God rises and says, "Here I am, my God, did you call me?" And my God says, "No, I didn't call you." Come on, isn't that funny? It's at least funny, right? It's at least funny. You got to give me that. So, all right, but that's enough about that reading. About our gospel, it's kind of interesting. You know, John the Baptist, the day before where we pick up today, had already testified to who Jesus is. I mean, yesterday he said, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. He's the one who's coming. He's the one of whom I said, a man is coming after me who ranks ahead of me because he existed before me," and on and on and on. And the last line he says that day is, "Now I have seen and testified that he is the Son of God." So we pick up the next day, and John's standing there with two of his disciples, and Jesus walks by again. And he says, "Look, a sheep." I mean, he does. The Lamb of God. Come on, that's funny too. Seriously. Nothing? Yeah, fine. You guys are missing out. The Bible is funny. Look, a sheep. So he points them out again, and what do the disciples do? They turn. They said, "Well, he already told us that that's the Son of God," and he pointed out the Lamb of God again. They literally turn and follow him. And, you know, John is always talking in layers. That's what they're doing. They're actually following behind Jesus. But it's also, on another level, you know, they're making a break from being disciples of John and turning and becoming disciples of Jesus. He recognizes them and looks back and says, "What are you looking for?" Well, they're looking for something very deep, because if you remember John the Baptist and how serious he was about things, wearing camel skin and a leather belt around his waist and eating locusts and wild honey, he took his spiritual life very seriously. And you wouldn't have been a disciple of John the Baptist if you didn't take your life of faith seriously too. So what are they looking for? They're looking for the ultimate answer. And when John points out the Lamb of God, the Son of God, the one who would take away their sins, that's who they want to follow. What are you looking for? Where are you staying? Where will you remain? They want to be with him. They want to be close. They want to know what he really has to offer. And he offers them a place with him. Come and you will see. Come and you will see. They know, something deep down in them, they know that they have found the answer to everything they've always been pursuing. They know that they found the ultimate meaning to their life, the thing that's going to inform everything else that they do. And what's their first action? Well, Andrew runs and gets his brother Simon. Isn't that interesting? He found what he's going to believe is the most important thing in his life, and the first thing he does goes and gets somebody else and brings them with him along this journey. I think that's interesting. You know, so many times, we find something good in our lives, and we don't really. I mean, my first thought isn't always, "Hey, let's get other people involved." My first thought is often, "I'm going to enjoy this." So that's just an interesting response for me. But those who recognize the Messiah, those who ultimately recognize the most meaningful thing in their life, are going to invite others to see him. They have a responsibility to invite others to see him. When I think about our own experience of faith, I think that might be the biggest place that, I recognize maybe even in my own life and other people's lives that we have that tendency to enjoy what we've been given, and not invite other people into it. And, that's a funny thing, because for most of us, whether it has been being raised in our own families who brought us up in this faith, or being invited in or back again, it's really through an invitation to come on this journey with me that we're here in the first place. I know for me, when I was in college, I never really strayed too far away from anything, but I had this job in the parish office, just answering phones in the evenings. And all I wanted to do was have this job so I could tell my parents I was doing great things in the parish, And I didn't want to be bothered. I would go to Mass on the weekends. I didn't want to be bothered. Just let me do my job and go home. And every Monday night for 2 years, I had the campus minister invite me down to the Newman Club. Every Monday night for 2 years. And every Monday night I had so much homework I couldn't possibly give up the time. Every Monday night I turned her down. But, after 2 years of being invited and invited and invited, ultimately I guess I was prepared for the time when, some just good, solid, awesome, fun peers invited me into something else in that area. It was an invitation that when I finally accepted led me deeper into my own faith, but the faith of the church, and ultimately changed my life in a dramatic way. And that doesn't mean for everybody who accepts that invitation you go on a journey to priesthood or consecrated life. Sometimes it leads you into beautiful and holy marriages, but it's an invitation that needs to be out there for us so that we can accept it and change. And so, I've accepted that invitation. Now what's my responsibility? To become like Andrew, the Andrew, not me, to become like the Andrew, and turn and invite others in. And it's not a responsibility that comes with the priesthood, that's a responsibility that comes with the Christian life. Having encountered the one with the ultimate meaning for us, we have to invite others in. Last week, I think, I still never listened to Father Bob's homily. I'm going to. If you watch mine, Father Bob, I promise I'm going back. I'll watch it. But last week, I think we both preached a little bit about, how Jesus draws the Magi to him. He's drawing the ends of the world to him in a certain sense. And, we have to get in touch with the real meaning of the Epiphany and let our hearts be turned outwards. And at first glance, it's at first turn, it isn't anything dramatic. A simple, conversation about your faith, acknowledgement after the weekend that you've gone to Mass, people ask you what you've done. But little things like that, praying in public when you have a meal at a restaurant. But, we also have to practice inviting people in. And that invitation isn't just for those who have never heard the gospel. Us becoming and inviting people also involves those who maybe have been here before, who maybe grew up in the church and aren't here they aren't here. So we have a program running again. I think it's the third time in about the past year and a half-ish, called Catholics Coming Home. And what I want to invite you to do today is, as you leave the church, there's little cards. It's similar to what you got at Christmas on your way out of Masses if you were here. It's just a card that you can extend an invitation. And it's not something that you have to drum up some crazy, story or explanation for the faith. Maybe if you're going to give this to somebody who's been away for a while, they have some issues with the church, you might just stand there and listen to them. But you don't have to have all the answers. Just, hey, here's this thing. I think it'd be good. Consider it. And it's just practice for us who hopefully have encountered the ultimate meaning for our life, the one who we follow and who leads us on. It's practice for us to turn and invite others to encounter him as well. So that's your simple homework this week. If you run into somebody or think of somebody we all have family members, friends, people we see at work or school or wherever, invite them to Catholics Coming Home. It's only about 6 weeks, and it's a chance for them to re-encounter the one who brings ultimate meaning to their lives as well.